The Lifestyle Show, presented by Selina MacKenzie.
Now, Colin Browen is one of the most trusted experts in true crime storytelling and investigative filmmaking today. Best known as the co-creator and co-host of Murder in America, one of the largest true crime podcasts in the country. Well, I'm delighted to say that he joins us now. Welcome to the show, Colin.
Hey, Selina, thank you for having me.
You're awesome. Welcome. You're welcome. So the podcast has been on air for about 5 years now?
Yeah, Courtney, my wife, and I started the show back in 2021, and it grew into something that we never expected it would be. And we're so thankful that it has become what it has become. But yeah, it's definitely it's been an interesting journey for both of us.
And I believe your interest started in a haunted house that you grew up in?
Yes. So I have three different kind of types of content that I produce. My wife and I have our podcast, Murder in America. I have a side project called The Conspiracy Files, where we talk about Epstein and all sorts of kind of shady figures like that. But my main channel that I started 11 years ago is called The Paranormal Files. And I have been across the world investigating hauntings and searching for spirits. And let me tell you, it's real. I don't know what it is really at the end of the day. I don't know what's causing any of it. But yeah, I grew up in a haunted house, and that was kind of what started off that journey. It's a crazy story.
What made you think it was a haunted house? Did you see any ghosts?
Well, the very first day that we actually got into the house, my parents built this house, so it's not like it was an old home from the 1500s or something. This is like a house that was built 6 months before we moved in. But the very first day we were putting our stuff inside of the home, my sister heard some men in the kitchen and heard these noises in the kitchen when no one else was home. She was convinced that there were people in the house. My parents and we all kind of thought, well, that's weird, but nothing. I'm sure that there was nothing. My sister was younger than me, and it eventually grew into something where I was hearing scratching on the walls and on my floor, and we were hearing each other when certain people weren't home. Like I heard my mom's voice in the house when she was asleep, and other times when she was out of the home. We heard babies crying. I saw something in my bedroom window. It looked like somebody wearing a cowboy hat that slowly kind of floated towards my bed. And funny enough, we actually had 3 psychics come in and try to cleanse the home. They walked room to room, told us who they believed was inside of every room in the house. And at the end, they did this kind of thing to remove the energy, but it didn't work. And afterwards, it became almost worse and scarier. And my parents ended up selling the house and moving out, and we don't know what really happened. It was
crikey. No wonder you're interested in it. I can see why.
Yeah, it was a crazy experience, and that's like the 2-minute version. I could go on for like 3 hours. It was so wild.
Well, I know that you've been to lots of different places, as you say, with Paranormal Files. You've travelled. You camped once for 3 nights in one of the most haunted forests in Romania.
Yeah, that was back in 2017. We spent 3 nights in the Hoia Baciu forest outside of Cluj-Napoca in Romania. And oh my gosh, was that crazy. Weird side note, we had the mayor of Cluj-Napoca come out and greet us in the circle. And we had these officials from the city, and the Romanian National News Service came out and interviewed us in the circle. It was a whole deal. But, that's a part of the forest. It's called the Circle, where nothing grows, and it's all essentially just dead, and scientists can't figure it out. And that's of course where we camped. And we had so many things happen. We had a tree. It sounded like in the middle of the night a tree snapped in half. It was the loudest sound I've ever heard. It was like a giant was in the forest breaking trees in half. My friend claimed that he saw a woman in a white dress walking towards us from the edge of the circle. Tons of paranormal stuff, but I think the spookiest thing about that place was just how open it was. Like we had people at 2 a.m. come out of the woods and circle us and just kind of try to intimidate us. I don't really know what they were doing. And another morning we woke up and our tents were covered in spiders and
Oh,
different
wow.
insects. Yeah, it was a horror movie. Like, you know, in movies, you'll be the character will be somewhere and they'll turn their flashlight on and they can see all these bugs crawling. That's what it was like in the morning. But I looked up, I was sleeping in my tent and I looked up and it was like thousands of bugs on my tent. I mean, I got footage of it. It was the creepiest thing that I've ever seen. I think even scarier than the ghost, I'd say.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, do you get an adrenaline rush from this? Do you actually enjoy it, or do you get scared?
Yeah, I definitely do get scared. That's, you know, I get that comment a lot from people like, oh my God, it's been 11 years. Why are you still scared of these things? And for me, it's not like I'm really scared of the spirits themselves. I'm really jumpy and reactive. So if there's a really loud noise and I'm sitting in the pitch black darkness, of course I'm going to jump and scream. But you know, I'm also not one to pretend that I know what all this stuff is or what it means. So, you know, when you're investigating the paranormal, you're really kind of interacting with this unknown force or energy. Some people call it this, some people call it that. I just call it unknown because, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, actually. As you are an I can never say the word investigative, that one. As you investigate, have you got any answers then or not? You still none the wiser like the rest of us?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is I fully understand that it is real. And I've documented some absolutely crazy things over the years, things moving on camera, noises, all sorts of unexplainable electronic phenomenon. But it's really hard to put it into words. I always say at the end of my videos, and people have kind of made fun of me for this because I end almost every video the same way. I always say, you know, this was great and the evidence was awesome. And we definitely talked to somebody, but I don't know who it was. I don't know why they were talking to us, and I still don't have any answers because, you know, you just don't. If there's a ghost hunter who's telling you that they know the answers, run the other way because they don't, and I can guarantee you that. And I've got, you know, people that over the years have said, "Oh, you're just talking to demons and you're talking to evil spirits, and you've got this and that." And I think there's a place for all those different belief systems in the paranormal. For example, one answer that I have received over the years, I never believed in dark spirits or, you know, some people would call it a demon. I hate to use that word because I don't really believe in like demons, but yeah, I never believed in those things. And over the years, I started seeing and feeling and experiencing energies that I just don't think are human, and now I believe in whatever it is. And these are experiences I've had that weren't, you know, for the show when I was filming, things that have happened just sitting in bed with my wife, or you know, having nightmares at night, things that were just so real. Yeah, it's just crazy.
And how do you know, are these places that you travel to, are they renowned places? Because I know you also camped at a haunted island in Italy, but did you know that it was a haunted island, or did you just go and check it out and found out that it was?
Yeah. That island is called Poveglia Island. It's in Italy. It is the one of the most infamous haunted locations on planet Earth, I would say. And this story is actually insane. Earlier, well, it was last year now at this point, but August of last year, I had somebody take me out to this island. It's in Venice area, and it is just, I mean, if you imagine like a haunted island, like a spooky island, that's what Poveglia Island is. It is like a towering, there's a towering abandoned old mental health facility on the island, and it's like basically an old medical building. It's gigantic. There's a huge like bell tower and all sorts of buildings that are overgrown in the woods. And I had this local guy who's my friend now drop me off there and basically just leave me until the morning by myself.
Wow.
So yeah, I wasn't going to do it that way, but then my brother-in-law's flight, he was going to be there with me, got delayed, and I ended up alone that evening. And I told him, you know what, let's just let's just see what happens if I go out to this haunted island by myself and camp for a night. And, you know, I'll tell you this, it was pretty shocking. I don't think I experienced any paranormal activity the whole night that I was there. It was really, really calm. It was scary as heck because, you know, I'm all alone on an abandoned island that's supposed to be one of the world's most haunted places. But yeah, the really crazy thing that happened was that morning at about 6 a.m, I was camping in a tent that I set up on the roof of one of the old buildings, and I started to hear thunder. And, you know, I'm sitting there thinking, I love a good thunderstorm. I love stormy kind of gray weather. So I was expecting like a nice morning. No, it was the most violent storm I've ever experienced, and I actually ended up being stranded on the island for a few hours because my driver couldn't get me, and then my tent collapsed on me, and all my gear was in there, and it was the wildest thing that I've ever experienced.
Not really what you expected, was it?
No, that was terrifying. The ghosts didn't really show up that night, but the thunderstorm.
Yeah, the rain did.
Yeah.
So what's the scariest thing you've ever done then?
Well, it depends, you know. A lot of people think a lot of different things are scary. Like for me, we've done a lot of different things. Years ago, we did. It sounds extreme, but we did kind of blood ritual things to try draw these entities out. That's something we used to do that I don't do anymore because I had some attachments follow me, and I've worked with some psychic mediums to try cleanse them, and it hasn't worked. But the freakiest thing that I've ever seen, I think, aside from what was in my house when I saw all those different things and like heard my mom when she wasn't there, a few years ago we were filming at a location in Kansas here in America, and there's an attic inside of this home/hotel building, and we were sitting underneath the opening to the attic, and as we're sitting asking these questions, it was as if somebody upstairs picked up this doll and threw it at us. This doll came flying out of the attic, and it smashed into the stairs. It knocked our equipment off, and it was so scary that I took off fight or flight. I took off running down the stairs because it scared the crap out of me.
I bet it did.
Yeah, it was just so shocking. You know, you do this for 10 years at that point or so, and you don't see stuff like that very often. So when you do see it, it's like, whoa, that was crazy.
Yeah. And there's no answers, is there? There's no, I can't think of a scientific reason why that would have happened.
No, we try to debunk. We look at every possible angle. We set things up again. We try to, you know, replicate what we just saw. We have been able to debunk stuff in the past. But with that, there was no debunking. It was just something completely unexplainable.
Wow. So on to today, you're into filmmaking and documentary making. What sort of genre is that? Is it a similar one, I would imagine?
Well, so Courtney and I started Murder in America back in 2021. And, you know, at that point, I kind of started mixing Murder in America, Paranormal Files, and I started investigating some of these notorious murder locations that were haunted by tragedy for our investigations on the channel, which is a whole nother rabbit hole we could talk about. But the documentary series that I've been producing for the last 2 years is focused on I don't know how to word this without being too extreme, but a child trafficking ring that was operating in America. And yeah, it's obviously non-paranormal at all. I've been working very, very closely with survivors of 2 different rings, actually, for the last 2 years. And the stuff that we've uncovered and that we're going to talk about in this series is world changing, I would say, if the right people hear it, especially with, I mean, looking at what's happening in America with Epstein. I mean, It's just insane what the country's like nowadays. But that's a whole different subject.
Yeah, absolutely. Is this to do with Frank Sheldon?
Yes, this is the Sheldon Project. Now, I don't know if people probably don't know who that is, but essentially, I just talked about Epstein. Sheldon was like the Epstein of the 1970s. He had his own private island that he was flying children out to. He was producing some of these CSAM materials that were being distributed to other pedophiles across the planet. And long story short, Frank Sheldon had been doing this for years. Finally, somebody went in and reported him to the police, to the authorities, and somebody figured that out. They called Frank. They essentially told him, hey, the police are closing in. This is coming to an end. So Frank Sheldon packed all of his stuff up, destroyed all of his files, and he fled the country, and he was never arrested. So that was in 1976, 1977 when all this was going down. And there were also a very famous number of murders that were occurring in Detroit nearby called the Oakland County Child Murders at that exact same time. A minimum of 4 kids who were murdered by what a lot of people believe was a child abuse ring. And that case has never been solved either. But we've been working with family members of victims of those crimes too, because they tie into this Sheldon story. But yeah, essentially, once Sheldon leaves America, he becomes a ghost, and the FBI, according to them, could never find him. He just, escaped, and that's that. We, as a team, have been working with an investigative journalist and reporter who wrote a book that kind of touched on Sheldon years ago called The Kill Jar. His name's J. Reuben Appelman. He's an incredible true crime author. He just wrote a book about the Idaho 4 murders, if you know that case.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he and I have been working on this since December of 2024, and not only have we discovered victims of Sheldon's in Europe, but we've actually spoken to them, and we flew to not only to Europe, but we also flew to India last year as a part of filming this series. And he had victims in Amsterdam. He had victims in Germany, in Berlin. He had victims in India. And the American authorities have never tried to piece that together.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. When I tell you there are victims, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of victims that this guy went on to abuse after everything that he did in America. And I'm telling you, in America, he was allegedly, it's really dark stuff, but he had a hand in the death of children as well, according to not only some reporting and some undercover officers, but family members of victims believe that as well, that I know personally. So yeah, he was already an evil guy.
Yeah, clearly. Let's hope you bring him to justice, if he's still alive, of course.
Yeah, the interesting part is that he officially has a death certificate in Amsterdam in the 1990s, but one of his really good friends who was helping him run this ring, he died that same year, just a few months afterwards, and it was at the same time as the Marc Dutroux scandal that was unfolding in Belgium. So a lot of people who study this case, since he has no grave, there's no evidence that he died other than a piece of paper, and he was an extremely wealthy guy and connected to the government there in the Amsterdam area. A lot of people think he faked his death, and so we don't know. I mean, he could be dead. I believe he's probably dead. He'd be in his 90s at this point, but we had someone affiliated with the story just a few months ago call one of our producers and say, I just got a call from the authorities, and not only do they know that you're doing this, but Frank Sheldon is alive, and he knows that you're doing this. And so it's like, do you believe in this story? Yeah. Do you not? It's
just like the paranormal, isn't it?
yeah. It's definitely a lot scarier to me. And it's really rewarding at the end of the day to like be able to work with these survivors and help them share their stories. And, you know, I've sat and cried with these people and just, it's so heartbreaking. But at the same time, when we wrap, it's like, it just feels empowering because we're finally listening to these, you know, these grown up kids who went through these horrific things that no one ever listened to.
Yeah. It was so different back then, wasn't it? It really was. Yeah.
I mean, I was only born in 1996, so I really don't have a grasp on the sound.
I do, unfortunately. I was a child of the time, so I do. So how can we see these documentaries and your work? Is anything actually out yet that we can look at?
The documentaries we are finishing, I can't really talk about because that's just one of the series. The other series is about an even bigger ring like that was operating in America that went all the way to the White House. So that's a whole different story. But both of those,
you'll have to come on again and tell us about it because it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I wish I could talk about the first one, but we're not saying anything publicly about it until we're done because it's a freaky story based on the people that we've interviewed and kind of some of the folks that are still alive that could potentially be dangerous. Anyways, if people would like to check out the work that we do, you can see kind of a teaser / preview of it on my show, The Conspiracy Files, which is on YouTube and Spotify. My paranormal work. I did a video on Frank Sheldon and the Pedophile Island, which is on my YouTube. It's literally called Pedophile Island. It's one of my biggest videos that I've ever done, which I was shocked by. I didn't think anyone would watch it, but that's on my channel, The Paranormal Files. And we actually went out to his island and you know, interviewed some people associated with the story a few years ago. And my wife and I's show is Murder in America, which obviously we actually did do some episodes about cases that occurred in Europe. We called it Murdered Americans. We covered some stories a few years ago. We did a mini series on the show.
I don't know how you find time, you and your wife, to do all this.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot.
You definitely keep him busy.
Yeah, if you love what you do, you know, it goes fast.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I'll definitely keep an eye out for you, and hopefully we can chat a bit later on when you can talk more about the documentary.
Yeah, I will let you know because I'd love to come on and I could talk about it for days.
And I could listen to you for days. I love true crime. Thank you, Colin Browen. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too.